few weeks ago, Andre Karpathy posted on X about LLM knowledge bases. Today, I'm going to walk you through building one out in my assistant, Emma. My name's Damien, and I make videos on using AI in production, whether that's using tools like Claude Code as part of your development workflow or building agentic systems. Let's take a look. So here we can see the post on X from Karpathy about LLM knowledge bases. The idea is that instead of compiling notes yourself manually, it's allowing an LLM to help you compile and organize your notes in a organized manner. So he's kind of talks about the data ingestion piece, which is where you kind of drop links, content, things like that you find useful into, say, some location like a raw directory, and then triggering an LLM to go ahead and parse those contents and run through it and categorize and organize it for you. So on the right, I have my Obsidian Vault. That's the what I use for organizing my notes. And I currently follow a kind of combination of the para method for organizing notes, which is projects, areas, resources, and archives, as well as using Zettelkasten for notes as well. So that's kind of like my knowledge base or knowledge network. Those end up being kind of individual notes of atomic units that can be parsed. And so the goal is to take your notes and make it something that you and your LLM kind of work through together and extract knowledge from it. So he mentions the notion of the raw folder for that. And I currently have a starting folder of zero capture and process. And inside of there, I have something called clippings. And so what I use here for this is I usually typically dump things like blog posts or X articles, things like that in here so that I can surface them later and reuse them. And a powerful way to do this is actually through the extension for clipping. So there is an Obsidian Web Clipper extension that you can install in Chrome. There's also one for Safari on mobile, which is super useful that you can use. And what you can do is you can actually specify, if you click this, go through and configure it to add to Obsidian. So if I do this, you can see here on the right that it actually extracted that whole post by Karpathy, includes some information like the source, the title, when it was published, and things like that. And so it pulled out the entire concept. What I want to do is I want to have my agent come in here and extract the individual learnings from this so that we can use it later and reference it as we see fit. So maybe that's helping me with content writing, helping me come up with ideas for videos, or just like for when I want to research something that I have a whole knowledge base that I can go through and link between them in a wiki kind of format. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab this. So we are inside a new terminal session inside of Emma's code base in Claude Code. On the right, I'm showing you the kind of dashboard or mission control for Emma that I use to interface with all of what we work on. And part of that is a scheduled jobs feature. So we use BullMQ for repeatable jobs and for queuing background jobs and things like that. So what I want to do is I want to set up a daily job that will go through and process the clippings folder and extract all of that knowledge, move the notes into appropriate places within the para structure, as well as extract the atomic notes for me, and again, create that kind of like linked system with wiki links so that we can see and access that knowledge. So what we're going to do is I'm going to prompt Claude Code to help me start investigating this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put myself into plan mode to extract that plan. So I'm using Opus 4.7, and let's trigger that. So I want to implement a knowledge-based LLM inside of my Obsidian Vault. What we need to first do is understand the current structure of the vault and how we might apply the information structure that Karpathy noticed. The things I want to focus on primarily are the raw folder and capturing that content. I'm also going to give it a link to that Obsidian node. So you see that the Claude Code session also has access to my Obsidian Vault. I have that clipping posted there, and I'm going to use that as context for this process so that it can kind of understand what our goal is as we come up with that plan. So you can see it's going to start off by exploring the vault structure and understanding the Karpathy post that you want to use as the basis for the information structure. So let's see what comes back. I haven't instructed it anything about things like BullMQ or anything like that. I want to see what Claude suggests to start and go from there. So we'll let it go ahead and do its exploration, and we'll come back when it is ready. One interesting thing to note here is how it has broken out into different Explorer agents. So it's spawned out 3 agents on its own without me asking for it. Each one is doing a different exploration within the code base or the vault. So we can see one agent has been dedicated to the vault structure. The other is dedicated to the vault manager skill. So I have a agent skill configured for instructing how the vault is organized and how the agent should interact within the vault. And then it's also exploring how Emma is integrated into the vault itself. So we can see here it now has a strong picture and it's going to start writing a working draft on the plan to figure that out. So it says that it found that the vault already has the bones of a Karpathy style compiler. Clipping's front matter contains things like compiler last compiled at. But I had a folder called compile knowledge. It only has one note. And it was never built. So I had kind of taken a pass at getting this working at one point, but it didn't really work so well. So kind of revisiting it now from a fresh start. It found the knowledge network, which has atomic zetals and heavy backlinks, and it notices Sage. So Sage is one of the sub-agents in my system where she is responsible for kind of managing that pipeline and also doing research and things like that. So we can see here that Claude has asked me to kind of nail down a few key decisions before we finalize. So let's walk through what those are. So it's asking about the wiki location. Where should the compiled wiki articles land? One option is in the file 5 compiled knowledge, which is what it recommends. It uses the existing aspirational location. The clipping front matter already has those pieces, and that is what it's suggesting. The other is in the knowledge network directly, compile straight into existing Zettelcast and no separate compile tier. Simpler structure, but blurs the line between human curated atomic notes and LM synthesized articles, or it says a separate sibling vault. So I think for me, I'm actually going to go to 4 and give it another suggestion. I want to use the compiled knowledge folder, but I want to make sure that when we parse these notes and are extracting the wiki, I also want to make sure we extract atomic notes in the Zettelkasten folder as well. How should the compilation be triggered? So on demand only. So me calling a invoke compile clipping via Emma. That's kind of how Karpathy's workflow works, or which is what it recommends. A daily digest plus manual approval, so heartbeat or daily briefing surfaces uncompiled clips. Fully autonomous nightly cron. BullMQ compiles all new clippings every night. Fastest velocity, highest contamination risk, and hardest to course correct. So I'm going to go ahead and go with 3. It does mention that it's harder to course correct, but I think that's okay. I'm actually going to say, let's go with option 3, fully autonomous nightly cron run, but make sure that we preserve the original notes in case something goes wrong so that we can recompile as necessary. So that should give us kind of the best pieces. So next, who owns the compiler? Sage already owns raw Zettel pattern for X bookmarks, new dedicated agent, or Emma, the kind of main agent. I think Emma delegates compilation as part of her existing knowledge work, lowest cost, setup cost, but conflates supervisor responsibilities with hands-on security. I think I agree. I'm going to go with Sage. That's the sub-agent that already kind of handles some of this compilation, so we'll go with that. And what's the scope of the first iteration? Phase A and B only, which is schema plus compiler, write vault, agents.md, and the compile clipping pipeline. Skip the linter and QA for now. Yeah, that makes sense. A only, schema first. So that's write the vault agents.md and stop. No. Or 4, schema, compiler, and QA surface in one push. Now, I think I'm going to go with what it recommends. I want to just get the piece where the vault understands it and compile clippings pipeline is set up. So let's go ahead and go with those options and see now where Claude ends up going and build from there. Okay, so the plan is ready for us to review. So let's scroll up and see what it has come up with. So context, Andre Karpathy's recent thread describes a personal knowledge system built from raw source and incrementally compiles. The vault is already 80% pre-wired for this, just never activated. Raw zone, 0 capture process clippings, 22 files, all with clippings from Obsidian Web Clipper. This is the de facto raw. Okay, so it already caught that I already have this kind of set up, so that's great. I didn't actually end up having to tell it that. It found that in the vault itself, so that's awesome. The atomic Zettel layer is a knowledge network already timestamped, exactly Karpathy's format, so that's cool that we're already kind of following that as well. Search is wired, yep, we have QMD set up, so that's good. Working raw synthesized template runs in production. Sage's bookmark pipeline. So I have a separate bookmark pipeline using the X API to kind of like pull down bookmarks. And so this is mentioning that it's similar to that. So we can see that there's a few things. This already exists. Compiled wiki articles folder exists, but it's empty. Atomic notes, there's already some zetals. And the agent schema or the agents.md is missing for phase A. And we have attachments. So decisions, we talked through those already. It has a phase implementation. So it's going to write a agents.md and go through there. It's going to note the compiler pipeline for Sage, and it's going to start by listing the uncompiled clippings. We're using a workflow as well. And for each clipping, let's see, it's going to read vault file. It's going to make some sonic calls and write them out. So, and item potency, retrigger, nothing changes. Good. Out of scope. Great. So a couple things that I want to do is, if you're not familiar, you can actually hit Control G. For me, that's going to open NeoVim. And now I can go ahead and actually, inside of Vim, view and edit the plan. And the main thing I want to do here is note that right now it's talking about specifically write the vault agents MD. So that's great, but Claude doesn't recognize that. It uses the Claude MD. And so we need to make sure that actually this should be the Claude MD. So actually I'm going to put a note. Let's put a note. We are using Claude Code. We should use a Claude.md, which I believe already exists in the vault here, and potentially alias to agents.md, or go the other direction. Actually, make the agents.md the core piece and symlink to Claude.md. Let's go ahead and note that. It called out Cloud.md. We can go ahead and Cloud.md, Claude.md. Cool. We'll go ahead and write that. And what I'm going to do is just let Claude know I left you some notes inside of the plan. Please review them. And it will go ahead and check that and go through it. So that's kind of one of the easy ways that I found to work within a plan, is to edit it and make modifications. You can either make those modifications to the plan directly and just then say, go ahead and run with it, or you can ask it to review those changes and go from there. So in this scenario, I want to have Claude review the notes that I left so that it can readjust the plan, especially because there already is a Claude.md and it needs to kind of read through that and understand what changes it needs to make to its plan to handle that. And so now it's gone ahead and updated the plan based off what I mentioned. You can see now in the verification, it's mentioning that schema of agents.md exists and Claude.md is a symlink to it. And it's going to do all of the live compilations, things like that. And so now we have a few new options. I'm using Opus 4.7, and since that release on a max plan, you can actually use auto mode versus manually approving. And so I'm going to go ahead and use auto mode. Auto mode has been great in that it will, instead of having to worry about manually approving every single request, it will actually go through an LLM itself to judge the request that Claude is looking to do and determine whether it's safe for Claude to do it on its own, and automatically approve it and also reject it. And I've seen this work fairly well. I've seen it properly reject requests that would be dangerous as well. So a nicer option than having to run dangerously skip permissions when you want to let your agent kind of run with things on its own without you having to babysit every single request. So that's great. And the other thing you might have noticed is that the option was clear context and start with auto. So what happens is, in order to create the plan, Claude has to use a bunch of its context window to understand what it's looking at, do the research for the plan. And so all of that is taking valuable context space. Of course, we want to start fresh with that with the plan. And so that's why it writes a plan to the Claude plans folder. And so what you do is you tell it, yes, I want you to clear the context. It will then read that plan back in once it's done. So now it's lost all of the research, but now it has the plan to go off of and kickstart from there. So then it has a fresh context window to get started. As part of the process, we can see here that that Claude has put together a new database table. So I'm using Postgres as a database for Emma's kind of mission control, and it is a clipping compile run. So it's a PG table where it's basically going to store every clipping run that it does to prevent duplicate runs from happening for idempotency. So that will be part of the system as it compiles those notes. Okay, so I ran into some technical difficulties in recording and had to come back. So what happened is we went through the plan. It finished the first phases 1 and 2, created a working version. So ran through the dry run, which essentially created the notes inside of the compiled knowledge folder. However, we did not write the actual Zettelkasten atomic notes and stopped there. So my first version, what happened there was we can see on the left here, we have some of the folders here. So we have AI agents, AI engineering, AI strategy and adoption, AI tools and workflows, knowledge management, marketing and distribution, and software engineering. So before this version, what happened was we ended up with a lot of duplicated folder structures. So too many folders were getting created for topics and categories. And so we had to work through refining that. The first version also embedded everything inside of a system prompt inside of the generate call inside of the agent. And so we refactored that into an agent skill, which I'll open up in a momentarily and show you. And we established a baseline set of kind of categories to pick from. One thing to note from this is that all of this has been running through a local LLM. So a couple weeks ago, I picked up a DGX Spark and set up my local models there. So I'm currently running Qwen 3.6 27B. If you want to learn more about that, I can do a video. Just let me know in the comments. And what we ended up doing was had Claude kind of go through and do its first own parse over everything and extract this kind of common category pattern. So if we take a look here, we can see this is what the dry run generated. So it took the clippings and extracted individual notes summarizing what each note did. We can see the type compiled. We have a title for the note itself, a topic source, information about it, where it came from, and then the Zettel. So these are going to be the atomic notes that it extracts. So individual kind of topics inside of there that will make up the knowledge base once it gets created. And so there's about what, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Inside the bottom, we can see the summary of the kind of concept. It also links out using wiki style links to the individual Zettel notes and the source here. So this is really going to give us that knowledge graph. If we open up the graph where we can see the interconnected notes between each other inside of this system. And again, this system is meant more here at this point inside of the compiled knowledge for the LLM or the agent to source through. So when I'm doing any research, communicating with my agent, things like that, it's going to go through these notes, the compiled knowledge, and help kind of like do research and find these atomic notes and help me create these systems or references together. So here you are back at the code, and this is the clipping compile skill that was created to work with. It has a description, synthesis instructions for the clipping compiler, turns a raw web or X clipping into an atomic concept, Zettels, and synthesized compiled article. It has some canonical topics. So we have AI agents, AI engineering, AI tools and workflows, knowledge management, software engineering, AI strategy and adoption, personal productivity, marketing distribution, personal finance and investing, and healthcare and regulatory. So these are the recommended topics that can be used when it's extracting or parsing one of these clippings to get filed into one of these folders. The LM has instructions that it is allowed to suggest new topics if it doesn't really fit into one of these, but I'm pretty confident that most of my notes will fit into something like this. And then we can see that here's the kind of skill it's talking about what it's doing. You are combining a personal knowledge base in the style of described by Karpathy and raw WebX clippings into atomic notes. It's giving it a source, so the clipping path, so that's going to be passed in as the argument inside of it. And some markdown. So we give it some rules of what the output should look like. It should have 1 to 8 Zettels per clipping. That's 1 atomic idea per Zettel. So 1 to 8 atomic ideas or atomic notes extracted. Should include the article body, which it but be less than 500 words. So it's synthesizing, not generating the entire thing, and don't quote at length. And it's referencing again, look at the canonical topics list above. So the canonical topics inside of the front matter. And that is how you can set up the Andre Karpathy LLM knowledge base in your own project and set up connected to your own agent. So if you are interested in learning more about how to make your own agent similar to this one, I'm using Mastra and Mastra workspaces. I can link a video here for you to check out the previous video where I show you how to set that up yourself. And if you found this video useful, please give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.